Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week where I throw a little chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random episode. And today's episode is from Voyager, Season 3, Episode 23, Distant Origin. So the episode starts off with the interior of a cave, and you see a lizard guy holding a flashlight and kind of brushing through the dust and stuff, and is scanning inside the cave and finds a Starfleet uniform, a yellow star engineering or security, a yellow Starfleet uniform. He brushes it off and kind of carries it with him, and then finds what looks to be like a leg bone. And then he has an assistant with him who is asking him questions about what he thinks this is, and he's talking about how he points to like the collar pips and stuff, and then the camera pans over to a human skull, and that's the teaser of the episode. So they have the bones of this person, of this individual, laid out on a table on this guy's ship. And again, the assistant guy is asking about his thoughts on what their hierarchy is, or what if they have a ship. Do you think they have a ship? And where are they from? And and he points out that they have opposable thumbs, and that they have the uniform that they have appears to have been replicated, indicating that they do have a ship and that they are warp capable, and that the cranial, so their skulls are smaller than these lizard people, and that's what I'm going to refer to them. They're called the Vosh. We find out later, but I like calling them lizard people because of Y files. And then so they basically, he's saying that he needs more. He needs to get more ships so they can do more investigations, because it appears that this individual had died like a year ago or more. And he also points out that they have warm blood, and they share 47 genetic markers with the lizard people. And it was believed that this race of people, the lizard people, were the first race to evolve in the Delta Quadrant. That's their their belief. And he believes that they evolved on a distant planet and then moved to the Delta Quadrant. And he calls it the distant origin theory. But they need to find the ship. And he's talking to this minister of, I forget what they called them, but this ministry, the council, the ministry, or whatever, their hierarchy, the higher ups. And this one lady is very skeptical, but says that she will consider the request for exploration, or for the expedition, sorry. And so then like I said, he calls himself the Voth, and that's the name of their species. So then he has friends in what he calls the circle of exobiology that also believe in this distant origin theory, or at least they support him, exploring the theory to see if there's any evidence for it. But then his assistant comes in and tells him that he's to be put up on charges of heresy against the doctrine. So then he decides that he needs to go and look for Voyager himself. So he goes out into space and finds a trader that gives him information on Voyager and shows them that he got some of the details wrong. He thought that they had green skin, where they call themselves humans. They have white skin or pink skin, as Shran would say on Enterprise. And then and he shows them Voyager's warp plasma, like a vial of warp plasma, which he uses that to trace their warp signature, and finds that Voyager is 90 light years away, and the lizard people have transwarp technology, so they can easily catch up to Voyager. So they find Voyager, board the ship, and they have basically what Tom Paris later calls personal cloaking devices that mask their signature, sort of like the ones that the Hansons used in the episode that I talked about last night, where they go on the Borg ship and have like a bio, I forget what they called that, but it's like camouflage. Biodampener is what they call it. That's right. So they board the ship and they observe Tom Paris and B'Elanna are having a conversation where she bets Tom. He's talking about something in engineering, and he bet I bet that you're wrong, and they're observing something, whatever they're talking about, and she loses the bet, and he has to go on, or she has to go on a holodeck program with him where they do like a batleth practice or tournament or whatever. And he says BYOB, and she doesn't know what that means, and he says bring your own batleth. And as he walks away, she's like batleth. And so that's a little bit of humor there, which I liked, because the humor and people have talked about it today. I've seen people talking about it while talking about this Supergirl trailer, and how humor today is more cynical, more Marvel quippy, and it's been going on for a while now, and almost 2 decades now. And how does that make you feel? And compared to like in Star Trek, it's more subtle. It's like the episode that I talked about last night, where they're in the Delta Flyer, and the doctor is with them, and Janeway tells Tom to proceed with caution, or I forget the exact term that she used, but he he's flying out of the cargo bay and sort of like does this banking turn that kind of scares the doctor, even though the doctor's a hologram. Why would he care? And he says something like, "She told you to proceed with caution." That's not the exact line. She says something, then says full speed ahead. Um, she uses like a nautical term, and I can't remember what it is. But it's like little humor here and there that is enjoyable, and it's not like it's quippy in a way, but it's different, and it's more subtle, I guess. And like some of the humor with Bones and Spock, and their little insults back and forth. You get a lot of that in continues in Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and even Enterprise. Whereas modern Trek, the humor is more. It's not so subtle. It's more. It's definitely Marvel like. It's it's just not well written, I guess. Anyway, on the bridge, Harry is picking up spatial fluctuations, and you know, basically, it's they're picking up these two lizard people that are observing the bridge, and on the bridge, they're observing that Janeway is in charge, and think that it's possible that they could have like a matriarchal society, and then um, Harry, I think, says that it's possible that there's two life forms with. That's when they mention like personal cloaking, like a cloaking device or something like that. So they put a force field around. Tuvok calls it a level 10 containment field, and then they try to leave the bridge, and then um, but there's a force field around the bridge, but their technology is light years ahead of Voyager, so they're able to get around it and go to the mess hall where Chakotay, they surround them basically. So Chakotay's there, Tuvok's there, security team's there, and he tells Neelix is kind of standing in front of them, and from their perspective, they can't see them, but they know that there's life forms there. Our perspective, we can see them, and he tells Neelix to get down, and zaps them or shoots the phasers them, and then uh, that breaks their force field. And I think Janeway had told them to adjust their phasers so that it kind of like when they have to adjust for the Borg, so they have to rotate phaser frequencies or something like that, and that's how they were able to zap the lizard people. So the assistant gets zapped by the laser, and as he gets zapped, he shoots like a dart at Chakotay, which makes Chakotay pass out, and then the scientist guy beams him and Chakotay back on his ship, and the assistant guy is captured by Voyager crew and is taken to sickbay. So I see that Michelle Fairy Tales is here. Hello, Michelle. So I'm just talking about Distant Origin, Voyager Season 3, Episode 23. So um, on in sick bay, the assistant guy's making like these clicking sounds, kind of like um, if you've watched Enterprise, kind of like the insectoids on there, or in real life, like katydids or whatever. It's just like, yeah, like that. And then his heart starts to his heartbeat starts to lower, and he basically self forces himself into like a hibernation. Back on the scientist ship, uh, Chakotay wakes up, and he's in like this stasis chamber, and the scientist is asking him about Earth. And Chakotay says, "Well, if you drop this force field, we can do like a proper first contact, and I'll be happy to help you." So back on Voyager, so he drops the force field. Back on Voyager, the doctors has analyzed the DNA and realizes that they evolved on Earth, and that like I said, there's 47 distinct characteristics that they share. So Janeway wants to go to holodeck 2 to kind of extrapolate like how what the humans and the lizard people have, what common ancestor they have, and how did they evolve. So she tells the computer, gives the computer a prompt to cross-reference, their DNA and the information they have, and the computer comes up with an animal that's like looks like a Gila monster, basically, and they say that's the common ancestor between this species and humans, which lived 400 million years ago. So then she tells the computer to take the next step and find the next evolutionary step, which is a hadrosaur from 65 million years. So during the last era, when the comet or asteroid hit, when the dinosaurs were killed out. And she takes the hadrosaur and tells the computer to, what would that individual look like if they've evolved from the hadrosaur to now, and we get the lizard people. So back on the ship, Chakotay is talking about how is talking with the scientists about, they're trying to theorize like and figure out like what happened. So basically, they evolved into a bipedal being that, like once they evolved, they like part of them probably split off somewhere and created a civilization, and that over time, because of tectonic plates and how the Earth's crust changes and moves around, there'd be no evidence of their civilization, but maybe they created. Obviously, they were able to build spaceships and get off of Earth, and then over time made it to the Delta Quadrant. So that's sort of like their explanation of how they ended up where they're at. And then he, the scientist apologizes to Kote for treating him the way he did, and says that in their society, mammals are considered a lower life form. And then back on Voyager, Tom is testing out the personal cloaking device that the assistant guy had on his arm, and he's testing it out on an apple. And Tuvok says, Tuvok's observing this as well, and he said that, I asked you to use organic material, and he said, well, it's an apple, and he said, I guess the apple will suffice. So they test it out, and it makes the apple disappear and the badge disappear. So then, of course, like I said before, this reminds me of the episode that I reviewed yesterday, where they had the Hansons were able to invent a device that camouflaged them from the Borg. So this would be like technology that I would think that that Starfleet would love to develop, especially when they're observing other species, before first contact, or like the Mintakans on Mintakan 3, where they're the proto Vulcans, It would be more, as Seven says, it would be more efficient than having the little duck blinds or whatever. So then a ship is approaching Voyager, and this is where we get a some sort of. So Harry says that they are using some sort of transporter, and they transport the whole entire ship inside of this ship, so you get to see the ship, and it's like basically a city ship is what it's called, and Voyager's inside of it. Voyager's a small ship compared to like the Enterprise or whatever, but still, this is a pretty huge ship. And in Enterprise, the show, the Aquatics have a similar ship that the Enterprise can fit inside of, which the NX-01 is also small, but still, that should tell you the size of their ship. So all systems are down. The power's out. The turbolifts are offline, and Tom and Tuvok are trying. They have to go through the Jeffries tube, but they're cut off by the Voth, who have boarded the ship at this point, and Tuvok is shot with one of those darts that makes him pass out. But Tom gets away, and so Tuvok is captured, and then at this point, Janeway had told everybody to arm themselves, so they all have phasers, and they encounter the Voth, and Janeway starts to fire her phaser, and they don't work. So again, they have superior technology to Voyager, and they are taken in front of they're to be taken in front of the Ministry of Elders, which is I couldn't think of what they were called earlier, but then basically tells Janeway, the the head elder tells Janeway that basically this lizard guy, the scientist guy, needs to turn himself in, or he or they'll kill everyone on Voyager. And they're interrogating Janeway. They want to know where he's at. And, his name is Gagan, and they want to know where he's at, and she doesn't know. She said that that he grabbed one of her men and left. Uh, and they want. So Gagan arrives, and he doesn't want to. He does not want to retract his claims about there being a distant origin. And so they say Chakotay is saying that they share a lot of the same genetic markers, 47 genetic markers, and that it would be impossible to have this many coincidences. And she says that the scientists disagree. They think it's a random convergence. and Chakotay says to check the data, and he says, and the lady says, the data is not in question. It's just the interpretation of the findings that's wrong. Then they bring in the assistant guy, and he basically testifies that Gagan was wrong, and that they got to him, and she gets into this argument with Gagan, and she says that 20 million. I'm not going to let 20 million years of doctrine go by the wayside. And then they're arguing back and forth for a little bit, and then Chakotay interrupts and makes an argument that he had looked over briefly their history, and at one point somebody believed that transwarp technology would not work, that it would be too dangerous for their society, but they were able to get transwarp technology anyway, and their doctrine changed because of it. And she claims that if their origin is not here in the Delta Quadrant, then they have no birthright here, they have no legacy here. And then Chakotay counter argues that they made several achievements on Earth, and they were a species that survived this asteroid, and then evolved, and probably were surrounded by other species that they were scared of, and eventually achieved space flight and made it to the Delta Quadrant, where they're faced with even more challenges and more species that they had to try to survive, and they survived together on their own, and those are achievements and legacies that they should be proud of. And then Gagan is found guilty of heresy. She's not buying any of it. The Voyager, and he's supposed to he's not allowed to teach any science, and is supposed to be sent to like a colony and where he'll be there for the rest of his life. And Voyager, the crew of Voyager is supposed to join them, and he feels guilty because he doesn't want to implicate Voyager in any of this, and they had nothing to do with it. They were just caught up in the middle of it, and he begs her to stop, and she makes him retract his claims in order to free Voyager, and then he's supposed to be a metal scientist, study of metallurgy, and which he doesn't really know much about because he knows more about paleontology. And at the end, Gagan talks with Chakotay and how he will always remember him. And Chakotay gives him a like a model. Looks like a marble, but bigger, about that big, about the size of a baseball. And it's a model of Earth. And he says that hopefully one day that everyone will be able to talk about Earth the way he has today. And then Chakotay beams back to Voyager. So I gave this one a 7.5 because, well, last night's episode I gave it a 7, so I had to give this one a 7.5 because I like it. I've always liked it a whole lot. There's a couple of themes in there. The two obvious ones would be Galileo facing, saying that we are not the Earth is not the center of the universe, and that the sun, or Copernicus, but all of those guys that went through, that achieved scientific achievements in astrology, but the church, despite probably agreeing with them, didn't allow their findings to be known until later, and then and then just the dogma behind that, and then of societies evolving, and how we once, the obvious one would be slavery, because they won't let us forget about that, nor should we forget about it. But we don't, have to be reminded every single day about it and be blamed for it, even though I wasn't involved in it. And how philosophies change over time. Civil rights, going from a society that feudalism to enlightenment, and obviously the other big one, it would be Darwinism, and facing the church again with Darwin, evolution versus religion. And some people in the church think that undermines their religion, to say that we have a natural evolution instead of God created man. But in my view, it's why not both? And just these are discussions that have gone on, centuries and thousands of years, and how was humanity started, and who created us? And let there be light could be interpreted to the Big Bang, in my view, and just different things like that. And again, this is where Star Trek thrives, is these type of discussions and these ideas. And somebody once said, I think it was one of the guys at Trek Yards, I don't know if anybody's familiar with those guys, but good guys. But I think they said one time that Voyager has more science fiction stories than, say, Deep Space Nine, And that I had to think about that for a little bit, and I think they might be right because Voyager, as much as crap as I give it, it does. They do have it's hit and miss, but they do have more science fiction, and I think they pointed to this episode as an example. And of course, if you want to go to the more humorous side, you could say Ancient Aliens um, with this episode, and I've been calling them lizard people because it's funny. But that's why I give it extra points because of these philosophical uh, type discussions. Where I think it kind of falls short is why would a society like that be so hell bent on them being the first species to evolve in the Delta Quadrant? It's not like they have this giant empire that they're trying to protect. They're just trying to protect their own society. And it doesn't seem to fall in a religious doctrine. So what are they trying to protect other than their own self-interest, I guess. So, but that's a valid thing too because a lot of people do. I mean, look at Congress and this whole Epstein thing. There's a lot going on there, and they're trying to. Some say, well, they're just trying to protect the Republicans or Trump and all. No, it's both. Both sides are involved in that crap, and they're. That's why you don't hear anything more about it because then they found out, oh, Democrats are getting money from this guy too. So maybe they're just trying to protect their own asses. You know, so there's that. And the other thing is, it would have been nice if Voyager would have revisited the Voth at least one or two more times and see where maybe that philosophy, that distant origin theory, sort of leaked out into the public and is causing chaos amongst their society, and maybe um, it's making changes in their society and stuff. And then that's the other thing about this episode that I like a lot is it's not Voyager centered. You know, it's completely centered on a whole nother species with Voyager involved. We see part of the cast, but it's a they took a risk and I think it paid off. Because usually the whole it's all every episode is always Voyager or always our main protagonist. So it's nice to have protagonists that we can root for that isn't Voyager. And I think, I know this is not going to happen, but look at if you have a show set 1,000 years from now, like Discovery and Starfleet Academy, wouldn't it be nice to revisit the Voth 1,000 years later, or the Montaukans, 1,000 years later, have the Montaukans evolved into the basically Vulcans, have the Voth evolved and their societies no longer has this doctrine and they embrace the distant origin theory. They've even visited Earth, but we're not going to get any of that because that would require intelligent writers, and we all know that New Trek does not have that. So, who do we have that joined us? Laura Doomney 1501. This is a new person. Loved Voyager, a heroic captain. Oh, yeah. Janeway's heroic. I'll give her that. I didn't love Voyager, but I'm coming to like it better. Revisiting these episodes, I like it better. But welcome aboard, Laura. Good to see you. So I don't know if you've been around here before, but twice a week I'm here doing a random episode review, and I have a random episode generator on my phone. And I do that on Wednesdays and Thursdays Eastern Standard Time. And we are at the point of the night where fate will choose the next episode to. So as you can see, the random episode generator is still on the Voyager Distant Origin. So I'm going to randomize it. And that's the premise of the show, is just to do random episode reviews of TNG, TOS, Deep Space Nine, and Enterprise, and Voyager, but not the new stuff. And so, as you can see, it came up as Deep Space Nine episode, or season 3, episode 25, Facets, which I do not remember what episode that is. So we'll see what it, I don't remember. I don't remember the title. I don't remember what it is. So I want to thank Michelle Ferry and Laura Demi 1501 for showing up tonight. I will be back for the 50th episode on Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I will talk about Deep Space Nine Facets. I'm the Dead Man. This is the Grateful Trek channel. And I'm glad to see that we have a new person in the chat. Hopefully you'll come back. That's going to be all for tonight. This is the Red Hour. Have a good night, everyone. And I also want to thank people that are lurking and people that watch this in the future. See you next time.